the WDF World Championships last week at Lakeside. The big talking points from the week: Beau Greaves defending her women's title. She's a back-to-back women's world champion. In the men's event, Andy Barton's making history for Belgium, the first Belgium senior world champion, beating Chris Landman in the final. The women's final, Beau Greaves winning that one 4-1 against Eileen de Graaf. And a big talking point, probably the biggest of them all, is that we did our predictions for the tournament. And Burton, you went 2-0 on the winners' picks.
Yeah, and it makes me think that maybe I just don't need to say anything more here. Why should I say anything when everything I said in the previous show was good enough? But no, I'll speak just a little bit about it, because when we talked, it was early in the tournament, and it had been a very, very disappointing first couple rounds. And I still think there were, even, looking into the quarterfinals, there were too many matches that just didn't live up to it. But overall, as we got really into the later, not quarterfinals, the last 16, there were too many matches that didn't live up to it. But I think as we got to the later stages, there were some notable matches. Johnny Tata playing his best match against the eventual champion Andy Bartens. He was 3 sets down, but he fought back. And okay, Bartens missed a couple match starts, but Johnny Tata played by far the best we saw from him all week, and he fought back, and he had chances in that 6th set to force a decider. That match could have easily turned the other way after it looked like Bartens was just going to cruise. I thought that was one of the more entertaining matches of the tournament. The semifinal between Chris Landman and Jelle Klaassen, sure, the averages weren't there, and sure, there were plenty of missed opportunities, but Jelle 3-1 up at one point, they go off the stage, and Chris Landman wins 4 sets on the bounce, 3 of which were tightly contested sets. Another match that could have gone either way, and it obviously made more watchable because both of them are absolutely rapid. I think Chris Landman is absurdly quick, and Jelle Klaassen is famous for being quick. So that match was over in about 4 minutes, despite going 8 sets. But it made it for an enjoyable watch, but it also was enjoyable because I think it was a very even match throughout. They were usually playing at about the same standard, and that's what makes a good match. If you give me a match between 2 players averaging 88, where they're both playing at about the same level throughout the match, I watch that over a match where they're both averaging 92, but they're alternating legs and sets that they're doing well in. I thought that Landman-Klaassen match was better than the stats because they were at that same level. Overall, I still think the tournament just was lacking. Even, the women's event not having the 2 players who are most likely to threaten Beau Greaves in the field, I think hurt the women's competition. The men's competition just didn't have enough players who I think are PDC caliber. Andy Bartens unquestionably is a PDC caliber player. He's one of the 128 best. Wesley Plassier, who lost in the quarterfinals to Dennis Nielsen, unquestionably is one of the 128 best players in the world. But there's no one else in this field who I would say is unquestionably. There's a few names that certainly are in the conversation. Landman, Klaassen, even Leonard Gates, Sebastian Bielecki. There were a few players in who I think are certainly in that conversation. If Dennis Nielsen plays like he did in the last 16 in the quarterfinals, him as well. But I think I've seen enough of him over the last 8 years to know he's not consistently a good enough scorer to do that. His scoring was brilliant in those matches, but overall, I've not seen that from him before. He's gritty, he's a fighter, and he's always going to give his all, but I don't think he's one of the 128 best players. And most of the rest of this field, I would say that same thing too. Beyond Andy Bartens and Wesley Plassier, there's no one who I'm sure is one of the 128 best. But Andy Bartens is, and he's a deserved champion as a result. And it's just that consistency, all of his matches within 1.5 points of one another. All of his matches just a little bit below what Chris Dobie did in the Masters, which I called that major winning consistency, that mid to high 90s every single match. Okay, he was the low to mid 90s, but it was 93 to 95 every single match. And very rarely did he have a spell where he wasn't at that level. He went off the boil for about a set in the final, missed a bunch of doubles, actually probably 2 sets. He won one of them. And there were moments early on against Dennis Nielsen where he just could not close things out, he should have won that 5 straight sets. Nielsen was lucky to win the 2 sets he did. But overall, he doesn't have many prolonged periods where he's not playing at a mid to high 90s average. And that's why all of his matches were 93 to 95. I thought he was a deserved champ. I thought he was a worthy champ. And if he does go to Q School, I think he'll be one of the favorites to win a tour card, and rightly so. He's absolutely good enough. And that's, I think, the biggest takeaway from the week.
Well, I'll start off with the women's event and with Beau Greaves, and really it was dominance from start to finish, wasn't it? She dropped 2 legs on the way to the final, and then when she does lose her first set of the tournament, it's when she was 3-0 up in a race to 4, 1 set away from the title, when Eileen de Graaf gets that 1 set back. So it's not a bad time to lose your first set of the tournament, is it? And what does Beau Greaves do? She comes back after that break and she wins the next set in 48. That's a 93 to 94 average for that last set. And she was around the high 80s to low 90s for virtually the whole week. And really, she was a class above the rest of the field. And for me, I thought anyway, the scary thing is it felt like she had more gears to get through, that if she was pushed a little bit more, she could have raised it some more as well. So I think the thing going into the Lakeside was her decision to pick that tournament over Ali Pali, and there was a lot of debate about it. Did she pick the right one? And winning the title, going back to back, I think it's been proven that it was the right decision for her. And my only hope now for this tournament in particular is that we have seen with the women's series, all of the top ladies players go to those events. I think it's now about trying to get the Lakeside to that standard as well, and trying to get the strongest field possible. We want to see Mikuru Suzuki, Fallon Sherrick in this event, but I just imagine now with the PDC stance that players have to pick between the 2 world championships. I feel that's probably some wishful thinking on my part. I don't see Fallon Sherrick putting in WDF events to her schedule, or Mikuru Suzuki for that matter as well, particularly the ones outside of Asia anyway. But Beau said afterwards it is likely she is going to be back at Lakeside next year to go for world title number 3. And okay, it's still 12 months away, but you'd expect her to be the heavy favourite again. And some of the odds for those matches during the week as well, 1 to 25 on, 1 to 50 on for the World Championship semi-finals and finals, something that I've never seen before. And it just shows how far ahead Beau is at the moment from the rest of the field that played in that event. As for the men's, like with the women's, it was the top seed that won the tournament. Andy Barton's pushed a little bit more on his way to the title, and we spoke to him on the show just before the Lakeside, and he said that Q School was on the cards for 2024. Now that he has got the title, is that still going to be the case? You probably would expect him to go to Q School anyway and try and get on the PDC tour. But like you said, the consistency, that was the thing that stood out for me as well. And I didn't have time to delve back into the record books, but I think you are going to struggle to find a world championship winner whose averages were as close together as you mentioned there, all between 93.27 and 94.82, just over 1.5 points across the 5 matches. That is remarkable consistency, and it wasn't the 100 pluses that we've come to expect now in the PDC, but to play at that level, you're looking at on average a 16 dart leg each time, finishing in 6 visits to the board each time. And actually, when you look at the legs that he did win, 43 of the 56, they were 1 in 5 visits or fewer. So 3/4 of the time he was closing out legs, and it was 100 average or better. So that shows you, I think, that he is ready for that PDC tour card, and he's now got to go to Q School to try and get it done, get it over the line and get on the tour next year. Aside from the winners, though, I think the most pleasing thing for me from the week was the crowds for the final few days. That was good to see a packed out Lakeside, and it was 20 months between World Championships, and when you've seen different players qualify at different times during the year, I think we saw some of them come in more match sharp than others. Others were visibly less match sharp. Now we have got this December slot for 2024 next year. I'm hoping we're going to see the standard pick up and the WDF start to build something here, because I don't think this year's Lakeside has seen them take any huge steps backwards, but I think at the same time they've not really made a huge leap forwards, and I think they do need to get that TV deal. That was a big miss that we've spoke about, and they've got 12 months now to try and work on something for next year and make the Lakeside, make their World Championship an unmissable event, because I think if you had missed this year's event, there wouldn't have been too much that you'd have been upset that you missed out on.